podcast from the grassroots, connecting people and sharing ideas.
Hey, this is Arlene.
This is Grace.
And of course, we are at our second segment. Today we are going to talk about a topic that we rarely actually covered in Southeast Asia.
Yes, that's correct. And then it was just fall on the 9th of November.
Which is a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just like 3 days ago, was it?
Mm-hmm.
It was, in fact, we are talking about Cambodia's Independence Day. They are celebrating their 50th years of being an independent state from the French people in 50 years back.
Yes, and then just to go back just to look at the history of Cambodia, and then also how it is run so far, is the French ruled the Cambodia itself in 1863, and it became a protectorate of France. And after that, it got its independence on the 9th of November in 1953 from the France.
Who knows, Cambodia has been independent for 50 years. And they were ruled by the French for quite some time.
About like 90 years.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, Cambodia is not a republic. It is a constitutional monarchy. That's why the King of Cambodia has used the 50th anniversary celebration of the country's independence from France to call on its ruling party to work together. And his name is King Norodom Sihanouk. He brokered an agreement between three parties to form a coalition government in order for them to have a more conclusive election in next year.
Next year, that's correct. And then this 50 years of Cambodians' independence, it just means something to them because it's really heavily influenced by French, and they had a lot of histories. I'm looking at them, and they had a lot of conferences, peace agreement between Paris and Cambodia, and a lot of things have set between these two countries until it was independent from France.
Mm-hmm. I just want to ask you one question. I know I ask Gauri questions a lot.
Okay.
But this time you are the victim.
Okay.
I want to ask you. Do you know which country has the longest serving and currently in office prime minister in the world?
Don't tell me it's Cambodia, please.
It is Cambodia, my dear. It's actually Prime Minister Hun Sen. They actually there's this one think tank actually created a chart on the list of longest serving prime minister. Mm-hmm. And we thought it was Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, but in fact it is not. It is Lee Kuan Yew in this case. In fact, it is actually Prime Minister Hun Sen. He's the longest serving Prime Minister.
Then let me ask you back the questions. So, how is the government run in Cambodia? As in, like, who choose the Prime Minister in Cambodia, and how come he has been doing this Prime Minister's jobs for a long time?
Just like Malaysia and Singapore, they have been winning 2/3 majority of the election since forever. So, but they are also like Malaysia. They are a constitutional monarchy, meaning that the king has no actual power, but it still play an important role in Cambodia to help bring about a breakthrough over a new government. Cambodia is another unique country. A few months ago, Gauri and we did a lot of review about Cambodia, and we realized that it can be another country that will resemble the kind of democracy that Indonesia have, although it will take a bit longer time because Cambodians, they somehow realize Prime Minister Hun Sen will need to go, anytime soon. He will need to go, and the sentiment on the ground is not that positive anymore about Prime Minister Hun Sen.
So there are people are not positive about the current Prime Minister.
Not really. Of course, when you have a prime minister that has been serving for the country for so long, of course they will be like, hey, what about other people?
So
they
they
can
want to
lead
give
too.
other chances to other people in the government. as well.
Apparently so. Apparently so. So that's the background of Cambodia. But if you want to talk about the cultural background or historical background of Cambodia, of course, as we all know, since the 18th century, Cambodia becomes a protectorate nation of France, and French colonial rule lasts for 90 years. Do you prefer to be colonized by the French or the British? I know this is such an absurd question because we were colonized by the British, but under the French rule, the way Cambodians view the French perhaps is a bit different because they did had a major war between the French and the Cambodian people. It happened in the 1950s where Cambodia wins the 1940s where French reimpose its protectorate. A new constitution permits Cambodia to form political parties, and at one time they were in fights with the French. Only until 1953, where Cambodia wins its independence from France together with Laos and became the Kingdom of Cambodia.
So different countries will have different ways of celebrating their Independence Day, and Cambodia it has reached the 50th year of independence. So what do actually people do on Independence Day?
In Malaysia, people will just complain. No,
Complain.
actually, that's not the truth. When I was younger, whenever we have Independence Day, I will wake up very early morning and go to the Merdeka Square and witness a lot of witness the march or the exhibition march by various government agencies, which were really exciting at that time. I'm not sure about now. When it comes to Indonesia is the best example because they would be playing all these traditional rural games, like for example, running around on a rice sack, or they call it bumi.
Yeah.
And even Joko Widodo participated in it. But in Cambodia, probably the reaction would be less enthusiastic because it seems like even among my Cambodian friends, they didn't really talk much about celebrating their country's independence. Perhaps it's not something that they felt they are free yet, considering that they are still under the rule of the longest serving prime minister in the world.
And also perhaps that's why it's the Cambodian Independence Day itself is not too prominent yet to people and as well as to the government, because it's still under the same system, and then they still carry the same government ideology between the people and the government.
If you remember back in the 70s, where Cambodia experienced the worst ever genocide, you can consider the worst ever genocide in the world under the rule of the Khmer Rouge led by Pol Pot. I still remember as a child hearing the news about Pol Pot. I was really amazed and also horrified by the numbers of skeletons and bones being displayed, as a result of the war being inflicted by Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge regime at that time in the 1970s. And
so it's called Cambodia's Year Zero.
Yeah, and it was actually a killing field. They kill a lot of innocent people. That they think they were so paranoid that all these people might be against the Khmer Rouge regime.
So what happened was this all. Almost everyone in the city dwellers they were forced to move to the countryside to become agricultural workers.
Yeah, they are educated middle class people.
Exactly, and then the money became very worthless. All the basic freedoms were curtailed, and the religions were banned, and that's why it is called the Year Zero. And hundreds of thousands of people, or like you mentioned, Arlene, the educated middle class people, they were tortured and executed in special centers. And also the people starved and died from disease and exhaustion. And the total death toll during that 3 next years is around to at least 1.7 million population.
So at that period of time, when it was still under Pol Pot, it's called Kampuchea, Democratic Region of Kampuchea, and they only retreated not because of United Nations or whatsoever international agency, but because of Vietnam. In 1977, fighting broke out in Vietnam, and Vietnamese forces invaded in the enlightening assault. And only in 1979, where the Vietnamese took over Phnom Penh, Pol Pot and Khmer Rouge forces actually fled to the border region of Thailand. And at the end of the day, Khmer Rouge takeover are re-established before that, and pro-Vietnamese Kampuchea People's Revolutionary Party wins parliamentary elections. The international community refused to recognize the new government. Nevertheless, Hun Sen became the prime minister, and Cambodia unfortunately were plagued by guerrilla warfare. Hundreds of thousands become refugee, and some of the refugee actually fled to Malaysia at that time in 1980s.
So then after that, the country actually renamed the state of Cambodia, and also their main their official religion is a Buddhism. So that was after the Hun Sen tried to attract foreign investment by abandoning all the socialism that was built in the country.
So what is interesting in 1989 is Cambodia, like a number of other Mekong region countries, they are strongly associated with socialism as the country's backbone. But in order for Cambodia to be able to move forward, in fact, Prime Minister Hun Sen tried to attract foreign investment by totally abandoning socialism. The country was renamed the State of Cambodia, and with that is where Cambodia now stood out as the way it is now. It became forces that are strongly capitalistic, or it doesn't really had that socialism feature that it used to have.
And also, around starting from 1991, there has been the bit of unease peace going on in Cambodia itself, because the peace agreement that was signed in France, in Paris, and then the UN Transitional Authority shares the power temporarily with the representatives of the various factions in Cambodia. And then, in fact, Sihanouk became the head of state. And then what happened was this three-party coalition is formed with Funsipact Prince Norodom Ranariddh as prime minister and Hun Sen as a deputy prime minister. So eventually the monarchy was restored, and then Sihanouk became the king again, and the country was renamed. After Cambodia, now they have renamed the Kingdom of Cambodia. The government is in exile, loses the seat in the UN.
So, talking about Cambodia's Independence Day. Sorry, my mistake. The Independence Day of the country is actually 61st Independence Day, not 50th. I was wrong about it. But I just want to highlight that the Independence Day actually highlighted the importance of Cambodia's king, Norodom Sihamoni, and is also highlighting the kind of future, the discourse on the future of Cambodia that Cambodian people want for its own country, because, as we all know, a lot of the sentiments on the ground are not really happy with the situation with the Cambodian prime minister.
And then, in fact, that there, like we mentioned, there has been a lot of dark side when it comes to Cambodian history, and one of them was coup, which happened in 1997.
The coup.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Where Hun Sen mounts this coup against the prime minister, Prince Ranariddh, and he replaced him with Ung Hoat, and the coup attracted international condemnation, and also it was the Pol Pot on the trial, and also sentenced him to life imprisonment.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like when it comes to the younger generation of Cambodians, they seem to be they seem to not wanting to back off. That shows that that is being exemplified by the emerging opposition party in Cambodia, a few months back when we were reporting about during us and the news around Southeast Asia, we noticed there's a pattern where the opposition is gaining strength, and people are starting to realize that maybe the next election will be the time where Cambodia will be able to speak up for what they want for their nation to be.
Well, that is true. The power of the opposition has been growing, and also in July 2013, the election was actually a critical moment in the Cambodia's politics. And although it was driven by different motives and all the political factions and general public could finally reach a consensus, it was time to get serious about reform in the government. So of course the people in Cambodia, they were focused on what transpired in the aftermath of the deadlock and the violent that protest was happened and produced. So little attention was paid to the role the public opinion has played in shaping the country's political landscape. So people actually raged about their own freedom towards the government reformation. And then also the significance has become more apparent in the actually recent months.
That's true. In fact, just this year, not really just this year, but just a few days ago, protesters in Cambodia were demanding the release of 7 Bionka activists outside the municipal court in Phnom Penh. For example, there were 7 women activists who placed a bet in the middle of a busy road in Cambodia capital to highlight flooding problems, were slapped with a maximum penalty of 1 year in jail each for obstructing traffic. And the outspoken land campaigner Ted Vanny and 6 other activists were also fined 2 million rial each for placing a bet in the middle of a Phnom Penh street during a protest that caused severe traffic jam.
And also to add on that, in fact, Cambodia, after the independence from France in 1953, the country has been characterized by a long period of political turbulence. And also Cambodia's darkest moment, like we shared before, was the coming to power of the Khmer Rouge, which was responsible for killing around 1.7 million people and almost destroying the country itself. So from there, the country only started to reform and then try to find its focus. But however, by ruling under the same prime minister until now, the people finally realized that maybe it's the time to have some kind of change in the country.
That's true. A lot of the issues in Cambodia, if you really look in it, why I said it's a capitalistic country, because it is ruled by an iron fist by the ruling elites. A lot of the issues, if you look at it time and time again, is always about land grabbing for development or for some other activities that are to exploit the economic purpose of that land. And this happens not just in Cambodia, but somehow all over Indochina. There's a trend there. And in fact, what is optimistic about Cambodia is the emerging opposition leader, and he's not backing out. He's probably the Anwar Ibrahim of Cambodia, if you want to put that in words. Cambodia's parliament, nevertheless, they are still very much dominated by the pro-government member of parliaments, just like in a lot of the authoritarian countries in Southeast Asia. And a lot of them, for example, in August 2014, when the opposition leader demanded that there should be an investigation of corruption and nepotism at among the higher ranking ruling party officials, but it didn't happen, and they said that they dismissed that call for investigation. That shows that the government is still very much in control or in power and influencing the whole of Cambodia.
Definitely, although the ruling elites will certainly not bow to all the demands, neither can they simply just ignore the public opinions. Even they are still in control. If they are seen as using their power for personal gain, definitely people will hold them accountable at the polls, and then there will be the shift in the perception on the public opinion.
So at the end of the day, just to wrap things out about Cambodia, yes, Cambodia have achieved its independence and is moving forward, especially with the ASEAN economic community. But at the end of the day, the kind of future of Southeast Asia that majority of Southeast Asian vision might not be another authoritarian rule, but might be a future where Southeast Asians can decide the kind of future that they want.
Definitely. And then, in fact, after the July 2013 elections, the public opinion from people, of course, finally arrived in the Cambodia's politics. They get to be involved, even though it's just a minor power from people. So it is sort of a game changer in the government system as well. So it is actually a positive news. But like you said, Arlene, the government is still in control when it comes to the final decisions for the country.
With that, that's all from our show for Blast from the Grassroots. All the best, Cambodians, and happy anniversary for your Independence Day.